Right, panic time. Let's see if this works, shall we? Now, apologies, I'm all sitting a bit close because I'm not standing up tonight. It's too hot, and I'm just testing everything out. So we're going to do it sat down, and we're going to have a bit of fun this way. Mostly because I want to see if it works. Right. Because the big test, of course, is it working on Facebook? Will be the true test of whether anything is happening here. So, you need to help me out tonight, folks. You need to help me out. You need to help me out. It might be a bit patchy. If it all goes pop, we'll turn off Facebook and see if we can't get anything working from there. I think is how we're going to run it. Because at the moment, it looks like my laptop can handle one or the other, but not both. Which is a fair enough experiment. Am I coming through all right? Am I jittery? Am I stuttery? This is what we can't quite tell. Because here, for me, everything's just running as normal. And it appears to be coming through just about on there. But folk in the chat, let me know. Is it working? Is it not working? A bit quiet. That might be the new mic. Let's turn me up a bit on the mic and see if that will be a bit better there. That looks like the levels are coming up a bit more there. Well, I appreciate most people are going to be watching on YouTube, and that's absolutely fine. So let's see if we can't get this working. We're not worried about numbers of people watching tonight. We're not worried about other bits and pieces so much. We're just going to have a bit of a chat and see if we can get the tech to work, because what we want is we want folk to be able to, we want to see if we can get the multiple platform bits and pieces working, because ultimately I need to have a discussion with myself about other tech, other options and things like that, because what I've done is pulled through a few bits and pieces onto the laptop to try and make it work, and clearly the premise works, right? But I've got continual encoding overload bits and pieces going on, so we're not going to do too much of anything right now, I don't think. That can just sit there like that for now. But we do appear to have a few people now. I'll apologise to anybody watching on YouTube, on Facebook right now, for the very, very simple fact of I don't know how the stuff works on Facebook. We're literally just clicking buttons and just hoping it works at the moment. I can, however, see the comments, which is quite useful. There we go. I figured that out as we're talking. Right. Slightly laggy on YouTube video-wise. Yeah. This is what always happens, though, Roxy. I think is the issue, is that the video will lag. I think what we're going to do is I think, is that we're going to apologise to folk on Facebook, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the Facebook feed now. We're going to turn this off just to give it a test. We're going to end the live video there. Just because it's very clearly really, really patchy and really causing a bit of an issue. And I think what this will do is do bits and pieces. I think what I'm just going to do is quickly put a comment on there. Let's get rid of that, because that should hopefully turn everything off, and hopefully everything is going to go a little bit slower as a result. We'll just quickly put a post on there just saying. CPU. It's one or the other. There we go. Or the other. There we go. Let's do that. Looks like I will need a slightly more powerful setup to get things working. So what we'll do, we'll just keep rocking and rolling as we are where we are. Guys, gals, and the gender fluid, and all beyond the binary. It is Wednesday. It is 8 p.m. and well, it's after 8 p.m. now, but it's the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, as ever, back to take you through the weird, wonderful, and wacky world that is British ice hockey, and we hope that you are all doing well. We cover the whole lot from Belfast to Bradford, Leeds to Lee Valley. We cover every division across all the lot of the British ice hockey system: Elite League, National Division, NIHL 1 and 2 in the north and in the south, the SNL, the WNIHL. If it's hockey, we will talk about it. Welcome to the May off-season special. We hope you're all doing very well. Obviously, a few bits and pieces going on here, and the CPU still is at ridiculous levels, and I can't figure out why, which is interesting. So we're still a bit laggy on the video, but we do apologise for that. But it does look like some of the it looks like some of the bits and pieces are at least working a little bit better than they were. So tonight it's going to be a lot of you lot and a lot of me. Because what we're going to do, we're just going to have a quick chat about all bits and pieces that are going on hockey related. We may not be on for very long, but we're going to try at least just have a bit of a chat about the signings, about what's going on, about the big bits. We'll talk GB, we'll talk WNHL finals weekend, we'll talk about all the machinations that are going on right now, just to kind of chew the fat. And like I say, I'm using the summer specials as a bit of a tech experiment. I've got some ideas as to things to try. This was the first experiment, was using a few bits in here through OBS, which is the software I use for streaming. And clearly, I need to rethink what I'm doing because or at least maybe I need to better clear out of my computer because, like I say, my CPU is still chugging away at nearly 80%. My FPS is dropping frames from time to time as well, which is less than ideal. So I need to have a think about what I do. Got a new webcam though, so as you can see, things are a little bit sharper and a little bit brighter and a little bit clearer. So hopefully that will do something of a job there. Like I say, apologies, it's not as quite as savvy as it usually was, and it's not quite the shows that we do during the season. But like I say, I think there's scope to do better, and I think the only way to do is to do. And I did a few tests the other day. They seem to work. I've come to do it live. They have definitely not worked, so we will have to have a think about what we do in that sense. Either way, quick bit of housekeeping, of course. Banners on the wall at wordpress.com. One source for all things related to British hockey, of course. Quieter stuff happening over the off-season, but hockey stories still very much around, as you will have seen. The content question asked again, where I spoke to Sophie Bonser and Victoria Stewart about their journeys as women, as content creators in the ice hockey space. Really, really enjoyed chatting to the pair of them. Very, very intelligent women, doing some really, really awesome stuff. If you've not checked that out, please do go check that out. That would be appreciated. Otherwise at the moment, like I say, for me, a large chunk of this summer so far has been getting stuff ready for comms at the moment. The spreadsheet, as it is ever growing. So what we will, like I said, what we'll do, it's just going to be a bit of you and me and the chat and just see what we can get going, which of course the chat is over there. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything you want to talk about, stick it in there and we will have a jolly good time. And so I wonder why some of the things are not doing what I want them to do, and why why my frame rate is dropping so drastically. But where to start? I think it's probably the first thing to do, and the place we will start is GB. Of course, IIHF World's now finished, and the result is, well, GB are relegated back to Division 1A for 2027, relegated bottom of their group. Not the lowest goal total in the tournament, though. The Italians scored fewer goals than GB did, but all defeats in every single game, including the games that it looked like GB should, possibly could, get some points out of. Losses to Austria, losses to Hungary, and a loss to Latvia into the bargain as well. Just generally meaning that, because the other games, with all due respect to everybody else, we weren't expecting to get anything out of the USA or Switzerland or Finland or anything like that. And even though they got closer to Germany than I think Even I expected them to not to be on the in the grand scheme of things. So obviously the big talking points, of course, about it. All of the usual discussions have started up again about a variety of bits and pieces. The Elite League's not developing enough players, which then means people say the juniors system's not developing enough players. We're not good enough at this level, well, clearly, because we got relegated. Talking about how GB as an international programme can do better. We've, of course, seen the retirements of Rob Dowd, of Ben Bounds, Josh Tetlow as well has joined those two in retirement, in international retirement, albeit Tetlow is only 28, though there are rumours about his future in the Elite League and what he might possibly be doing next season. But ultimately, just a big head scratcher of a tournament for GB. Obviously, folk would have been there and will have seen it with their own eyes, of course, like a lot of you guys did. I watched it on television, mostly Swiss and German television, it should be said, but I did watch it on television. If you want, I know the guys from 3-on-3, both Jono and Dave, were both in Switzerland, and I know they've got an episode coming out next Tuesday, which will probably give you some real depth of feeling as to what it was like in the rink from a GB fan perspective. So like I say, just stick in the chat what our thoughts are, what people's thoughts are on GB, and we can kind of knock the ball around from there. For me, I think we have to make do with the fact that we are the Wolverhampton Wanderers of international ice hockey. At the moment, our programme is a yo-yo programme, and I don't think that's a bad thing in and of itself. I think we just have to kind of accept our place right now. GB hockey in general is in a massively transitional phase. We're merging our governing bodies. The priorities for different bits and pieces are all over the shop right now as people try to knit threads together and try and get us all on one page doing one thing in one way. And I think that's going to be hard for the time being, and I think that is going to be tough for the time being as well. And we just have to look at the fact that it is not always going to work, and if we come up into the world group, to stay up is difficult for a nation like Great Britain, where we have a finite player pool, where we do not have an amount of elite top end European level talent, even ignoring the NHL. We have one player playing in a top level league in Europe in Liam Kirk. With all due respect to Nathaniel Halbert, even he is playing in the Ice League, and the Ice League is not in that upper echelon. The Ice League is probably around maybe half a step ahead of what's going on in the Elite League right now. And I think there's a bunch of things that need to be done to address it. The thing is as well is that a lot of the things people point out aren't wrong. Like, kids in Nicky Watt was speaking to Sam Chima about this on 4,000 and Counting the other day, and Sam talked about the fact that we need to be doing more for juniors, more for kids, to get them into a position where they can get to that level and then be able to push on and do the next thing. And Sam's not wrong. And there's people that will sort of say, I can see Mike in the chat, Hockey in the UK has no interest in Team GB, no GB players in European teams, Ice Hockey UK needs to send youngsters to Europe to improve far quicker. And Mike's not wrong. And when people talk about the need of the Elite League to lower the import limit to allow more GB, allow more British developed youngsters to come and step up into that level, they're also not wrong. The problem is everybody seems to think that the thing everybody seems to have a thing that they think is the biggest issue, and they want that done, and none of the rest of it is allowed to happen at the same time. And the biggest problem is that all of these things are a problem. And so we need to do all of them, and we need to find a way to do all of them. Maybe not all at the same speed. And maybe, at times you can have priorities that are bigger and better than others. But I think you can have it in a position where these things do happen at the same time, and we look at doing things in a very, very similar way. I don't think this is an unreasonable thing to try and look at doing. I do wonder what Pete Russell's future is as the head coach of GB now, just because of this. And obviously, GB being relegated from the top flight is not a sackable offence. It shouldn't be a sackable offence, I don't think. Just because, again, of the nature of we are the Wolves, we are the Leicester, we are the Ipswich of international ice hockey. And I think there's something to be said for finding for being in that position. The Italians are in that position. The French are in that position. Although, of course, we know that in 2027 the French will be automatically promoted back to the World Group because they are hosting in 2028. But we're in a really competitive 1A group next year with the French, with the Poles, the Estonians, the Italians, and Lithuania as well. Like 1A is going to be brilliant next year. Just like people talk about, think about the championship in football next year. You think about the championship where you'll have Southampton and Middlesbrough, and you'll have Blackburn and Burnley, and you'll have West Ham and Millwall. Like, there's a lot of good stuff happening. Can happen at the second level, arguably more entertaining in some ways than the top flight. So GB going down isn't in and of itself a problem, but there needs to be a plan. What is the long-term plan? Because Ice Hockey UK have talked about what their ambitions are, but not necessarily put the tarmac down for the road to travel in that sense, right? So I think that's I think that is a problem that we need to face, and especially with the retirement of Ben Bounds and Robert Dowd as captain. Though it would be absolutely no surprise who gets that captaincy. It's going to be Liam Kirk, but we need to work out what we do on that front. What were the positives from Worlds? Positives from Worlds. One, I think Matt Robson acquitted himself pretty well in terms of being able to step in and take big minutes and do good work for Great Britain. Obviously, coming in as a new face. Obviously, some people will not be happy with the dual national argument. Robson, has a Welsh mother. He's not just sort of come over here and qualified for Team GB off the back of the fact that he's just hung around here for no reason. He came with a plan, and that plan was to qualify to play for the British national team, and he has achieved that. And I think him and Ben Bounds made a pretty solid 1-2 combo at Worlds this year for GB. The other two big names that seem to have really caught the imagination are Liam Steele and Bailey Harewood, who international hockey for Bailey Harewood is really, really interesting because it arguably seemed to really suit his style, where he is arguably too good for the national division, but maybe hasn't quite found his niche at elite league level. The way international hockey is played seems to really work for Bailey Harewood, and he was really, really impressive with the opportunities that he got. But given the fact he was putting Bailey to one side, given the fact he was initially a replacement, I think people have realised that Liam Steele is the real deal. I was really pleased to think that at the start of the tournament, I think putting him alongside Travis Brown was a really, really sensible bit of coaching by Pete Russell. Travis Brown, of course, too, making his international debut for GB, gave a decent enough account of himself after a decent, if not super mega hyper wonderful year in Guildford for the Flames. But having watched a lot of Travis Brown, one thing Travis Brown was really good at across the entirety of the year was his ability to shepherd younger defensemen in. I thought Brown was at his best when he was looking after Ben Solder, and he was. I think Brown, alongside Liam Steele, was a really good choice because it just gave Steele a bit of freedom to know that if he maybe was in the wrong place at the wrong time or took a step too far one way, he had a really experienced, really big body alongside him to just look after him and just let him know that the mistakes do get made and it's okay. It's something that Slough have used to really, really great effect by playing like 47-year-old Neil Lydiard alongside 18-year-old Jude Affleck, and like just allowing that younger defenseman the idea to go out and play with a bit of freedom, and that that the mistakes might get covered, so they will play well enough so they won't make those mistakes. But Steele for me, I appreciate Matt Robson got player of the tournament for GB, and from a supporters club perspective, that's entirely their decision there on the ground. From what I saw of it, Liam Steele, aside from the fact that he had something of a breakout year in the national division, he is going to be a force to be reckoned with at elite league level, and he is going to be a mainstay of the Great Britain national side now for years to come. He looks absolutely first class. Of course, Joe Scutts and I had the pleasure of being able to commentate on the national division finals weekend, and it just and he scored a fantastic goal there, and that was just brilliant, brilliant stuff. So I'm really really excited to see what kind of goes on from that point, and we just have to kind of push on from there. Only one promotion for next season from 1A is France host 2028, so it's going to be even more competitive. France can finish bottom and still go up. Tigers did it with Luca and Stanton. Obviously different up front than from a defensive perspective, but a really really good idea in terms of Taylor Stanton just having that experienced head around him. I think the only issue, of course, is that if you make the mistakes as a forward, God bless Vladimir Luka, but he ain't back checking at any speed whatsoever. God bless his cotton socks. Did also see Vlad Luka plays ball hockey during the summer. Basically just never rests. Jamie, good to see you, my good man. Does Harewood sign full-time in Cardiff next season? I think his international exploits this last week have will force the hand of somebody somewhere. Because certainly it's been very interesting from a Coventry perspective as well. If you have a look at Coventry, where they've had Brindley Caps and they've had Zane McKenzie kind of on the outskirts of the first team, and they've let them disappear off. And then this year, Kevin Moore has said, "You're full time. You're full time with the Blaze this year," and I think as well that's kind of another thing for Harewood, another card Harewood can pull out of his back pocket. Not only has he had another point-busting year at national division level, he's then gone to Worlds and outperformed established names. He's then, he can then point to the fact that Coventry are taking chances on guys who aren't, not near my level of productivity. Albeit Brindley Caps is in that sort of echelon of forwards with Harewood, I would argue. Whereas Mackenzie is much more of a utility. Apologies, bit of an itchy nose. Mackenzie is a different role player in that sense. But the for me, if Cardiff don't pull the trigger on Bailey Harewood this year, I have a feeling that potentially somebody else does. And the fact, of course, Ben Solder has left Guildford to go to Fife. Does Paul Dixon potentially look at bringing in a Bailey Harewood to go alongside a Sam Talbot and go with all import defence on the back end? There are, that is an option. Does Kevin Moore? He's staring down the prospect. He's already lost. Archie Hazeldine has already left Coventry. Is there potential for other Brits to leave Coventry as well? We don't know, but does Kevin Moore maybe say to Bailey Harewood, "Hey, look, Cardiff, Cardiff's your home, and we get that, but we're willing to give you the chance, and we're willing to let you go, willing to let you come and have a run here." It worked well for Max Stewart. It's worked well for Brindley Caps. Does that fact that Coventry are willing to play Brits in those situations, does that appeal to Bailey Harewood in terms of whether he goes somewhere else? Or does Paul Thompson finally say, you know what, it's time, and just says, let's run with this, Bailey, and let's kind of work with it. Oh, apologies. Snotty. Between heat and hay fever, this is the worst time of year for me. Fife might be another option. Is obviously another option as well. They want to go for their established Brit core. Of course, Tim Wallace now, the man behind the bench at Fife, which was another thing that I had on my list because that is a fascinating and interesting appointment at the best of times. But in terms of GB, just to kind of wrap up everything from a GB perspective, the going down is what it is. And I think the performances against the teams that we should have been closer to are the thing that people will be irked by. Good evening, Kieran. Good to see you. The result against the Austrians, not good enough. The result against the Hungarians, appalling. Should have been a much closer game. And so I think there was a potential here to come out of this with 6 points and just be going home having not qualified for quarters, and instead it's just not work. And there are systemic issues that still need a lot of attention from a GB perspective that we are not going to solve tonight on the show. But hopefully, some of the knitting together of bits and pieces, potentially as well a change of coach if they decide to go down that route, with more members of the golden generation retiring. Where do we go? But ultimately, Double IHF Cup of Nations was a very, very useful couple of runouts for GB. You know, a few names still sort of very heavily involved. Halbert has got to be kept around. You know, Liam Kirk, if he's available, is always going to show up for GB. And I think there is something to be said for, because I see that Dave has put in the chat, does GB actually get together and train when there's no tournaments are being played? No, because for the most part, because GB don't respect the international breaks. But I think the question has to become now for the IIHF Cup of Nations. You know, Pete Russell did a very good thing and bled in a lot of young talent. A lot of names got an opportunity to wear a GB jersey at senior men's level, who you would have thought might have been on the periphery, on the fringes. Do we now, ahead of 1A, need to use the IIHF Cup of Nations and put the full roster out? The Nielsen's, the Wallers. You know, obviously, I mean, Waller obviously did go to both tournaments, but getting everybody in, the whole kit and caboodle, and saying to the Elite League, it's time to play ball and get, you know, we've got to make best of what we do now. We need the best guys. Let's use the international breaks wisely. So that's what that is on that front. But yeah, the next thing on my list was because, of course, from Muggins here commentating in the Elite League, but my roots very much in the National, and a man who is crossing the great divide as Tim Wallace is back as a head coach in the Elite League, having taken over the reins of the Fife Flyers. Now, given the fact that he was relieved of his duties in February with Milton Keynes in 6th, the fact he's taken over an Elite League team from the outside with minimal context makes zero sense at all. And I have, like I think a lot of us have, been critical of Tim Wallace's coaching at times at the Milton Keynes Lightning over the last couple of years, particularly in his roster composition, because he tried to get too many big names, too many high skill guys to do things that weren't high skill. And I think that ultimately was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, because they just couldn't perform. And then this 25-26, there were gaps in their roster when players left that they didn't fill in the correct way. Arguably got his import composition a little bit wrong as well. And now he has fallen upwards. Much in the, you think about Vincent Kompany getting sacked by Burnley for getting them relegated, and then ending up coaching Bayern Munich. This is maybe not quite Burnley to Bayern, but it is certainly an interesting turn of events for Tim Wallace. Ultimately, given the fact that he has the level of contacts that he does, and Elite League hockey being so much of a different beast, I don't think this is necessarily the worst appointment. However, it comes with the caveat that we have seen what Tim Wallace coaching does in the main, and will he have the requisite ideas and the requisite roster to put something together to compete on a regular basis at Elite League level, where the playoffs are an option for Fife come April of 2027. Now, the announcement from the Flyers that they're looking to have a good British core supplemented by imports. It is fascinating wording to read, given the way the Elite League works. What I'm interested in is what that looks like. Now, of course, we've seen the first few names. Ethan Haddon back. Reese Kelly and Ben Solder have been brought in on defence for the Flyers. Of course, Reese Kelly, a Fife junior, a Fife boy, obviously been around the houses of a little bit. He's been with the Steelers. He's been with the Glasgow Clan. He's been with Bristol. Nearly signed for Swindon and then went to Glasgow anyway. So there's a lot of talk there. Ben Solder had an okay, if not spectacular, excuse me, season in Guildford, of course. Some games where he didn't get on the ice at all. Some games at the beginning of the year he was saying 15, 20 minutes because Guildford had so many injuries. It was effectively him, Travis Brown, and a traffic cone on defence in sort of October on periods. But for me, you can understand why Wallace has made some of these calls, right? Where he's bringing in players that he knows he can coach, and that he knows he can get something out of into the bargain. And of course, the name that is rattling around when it comes to Fife is potentially Sean Norris, a guy who has been well coached, well talked about, potentially going to Fife. Now, of course, there is no confirmation of that, but it is the name that people mention because, of course, Norris, high quality goal scorer, top end Brit, would be the sort of player who is not very well used on a third or a fourth line, much better suited to a second and first line game. Is this his opportunity to do that? Seeing Jamie's put in the chat, Carl Carruth the Fife potentially, given his departure from Solway this week. It wouldn't surprise me, but I do wonder whether potentially he remains on Glasgow's radar when it comes to bits and pieces. But Carruth again becomes an option. Any young quality Brit who isn't in a position to, who's not in a position now, because of course the issue is Solway, which we'll talk about in a bit, is part of it. But what I'm interested to see is what does this look like? Because from an import perspective at the moment, it's Garrett Hunt, and Garrett Hunt was a not as effective as he could have been kind of player. So I'm interested to see what kind of comes of it all in Fife. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings. Keep sticking stuff in the chat. But certainly, either way, there was a lot going on. Other bits have happened, of course, in the Elite League since we've been away on our hiatus for the last month. Of course, is that the Manchester Storm are leaving Altrincham for the AO Arena. Of course, that is a massive piece of news with the Storm. This iteration of the Storm returning to the Storm's ancestral home, formerly the 9X, the Manchester Evening News Arena. It's had a bunch of different names, now known as the AO Arena. And the Manchester Storm will be playing out of the lower bowl of the AO Arena to start 26-27. Interested as Emma Finnerty, part of the ownership group, of course, wife of Ryan, talked about the fact that Storm want to be the biggest club in Europe, which people laughed at, but there's nothing wrong with having dreams and goals and aspirations. You don't move from the rink at Altrincham, and anybody who went and watched the Phoenix there will know, or who's ever watched the Altrincham Aces will know what Manchester is like. I know what Altrincham as a rink is like. The fact they are shooting for the moon and hoping to fall among the stars. I'm interested to see what this kind of looks like. Of course, some big names back for them already. Drew DeRidder, last year's Elite League Netminder of the Year, back between the pipes for them. They've got a couple of, they have, however, lost a couple of bigger names. Nick Welsh, who I always thought, who I liked but thought they were better defensemen than him in the main across the year. Obviously, Storm fans loved him to pieces. I had other players above him when I voted in the media poll for the All-Star teams, but the idea that the Storm have got a massive selling point, which is we've got this brand new, wonderful, shiny building that we're going to be playing in the middle of one of the best sporting cities in Britain, because whether you like City or United or you hate them, like Manchester is a sporting city, with the football, with the cricket, with your ice hockey being played at one of the major entertainment venues in the city. You've got basketball, you've got everything there. Cricket of every variety to watch as well. Rugby league up that neck of the woods as well. There's a lot going on in Manchester, and the Storm are now in a prime position to really, really put themselves on display and get some interesting talent in. Nice for British hockey to have another team playing in an arena. Yep, something else to visit. Another option for playoffs. People talk about whether the playoff weekends have outgrown potentially where they are, especially people have said to me for years, is Coventry the right place for the National Division playoff finals? I would argue yes. I don't think moving it to Manchester straight away is the right thing to do, but it does give another option. GB at Manchester, in some of that's not Sheffield or Nottingham or Milton Keynes would be really awesome. For that, would still like GB actually in the south of England, because despite what people say, Milton Keynes isn't in the south. So Manchester's approach there is an interesting one as well, especially when you consider what Cardiff are doing. Cardiff in a much smaller arena, jacked up their season ticket prices into the bargain, and the Storm have not really made their season tickets drastically expensive. So, a lot to be said there for what the Storm are doing, very much on the up for things in Manchester. For a team, however, that's not quite so much on the up, I mean, obviously we had the news before the end of the season. The Oxford City Stars are not returning this year. The committee there still figuring out what they do going forward. The Rising Stars will play in Division 2 in the south. But of course, the big news out of the National Division. The National has had pretty much some sort of palaver the last few summers. It was Sheffield, then it was Romford, then it was the Bees, and now it is the Solway Sharks, who are in real trouble. Of course, the announcement that the Dumfries and Galloway Council would not interact with the current ownership of the Solway Sharks, led by John Strange. It's led, of course, to a lot of folk connected to the club sort of interjecting. Of course, we saw about Ross Murray having put in for the intellectual property and the trademark for the name Solway Sharks. We've seen announcements come out from Jamie Thompson through the Sharks Supporters Club bits and pieces, and of course we've had another piece come out, another bit today come out from the Sharks, themselves, the current Sharks ownership as it was. Let's just see if we can't, if we just quickly grab the statements if we can, because the Solway Sharks Supporters Club put out a statement the other not too long ago. I'll just quickly grab all of the bits and pieces up. So this was the Shark. So the Sharks from the Shark Sports Club bits and pieces yesterday, because they have now founded their own new limited company, which is SSIHC, which they've all put together very quickly. SSIHC Limited can confirm that discussions with DJR Sports Limited regarding the future operation of the Solway Sharks Ice Hockey Club have now formally concluded. Throughout the dialogue, both parties engaged constructively and in good faith, with a shared understanding of the importance of the club to its supporters and the wider community. We thank DJR Sports Limited for their time and cooperation during this process. Following careful consideration, SSIHC Limited has taken the decision to move forward independently and will not be pursuing the transfer or acquisition of assets from DJR Sports Limited. As a result, all matters relating to pre-sold sponsorship agreements and 2026-27 season tickets remain the responsibility of DJR Sports Limited. Sponsorship and season tickets, all individuals and organisations upon purchase sponsorship packages or season tickets should now contact DJR Sports Limited directly regarding refunds or further information. SSIHC Limited will not be assuming responsibility for any prior financial commitments made under DJR Sports. We understand the importance of clarity and transparency at this time and encourage all affected parties to seek prompt communication. SSIHC Limited is now focused on establishing a new sustainable future for NIHL ice hockey in the region. Our group of directors remains fully committed to ensuring the continuation of the sport at a competitive level and to rebuilding strong relationships with supporters in the community. Our talks are very positive with Dumfries and Galloway Council. We're expecting to have a deal concluded in the very near future because, of course, the council said that they would not deal with John Strange's leadership group, given what the council said was they're defaulting on payments. There was a statement out earlier today from the Sharks. This is from 8 hours ago from the current ownership. To all current Sharks season ticket holders and sponsors, given the most recent statement from Jamie Thompson, which we had no prior knowledge of, we'll be communicating directly, not via social media, with all season ticket holders and sponsors on Monday the 1st of June with an update on the next steps. No further comments will be made at this time. So that kind of puts the point of that, there is something, there is a plan to keep ice hockey rolling in Dumfries as it stands. That they want with what Ross Murray has done, they should hopefully potentially have the name Solway Sharks to do it going forward. The current ownership that operated the club we know as the Solway Sharks last season is saying there'll be an announcement on the 1st of June, which is obviously the beginning of next week. Now, SSIHC Limited as a company was incorporated on the 30th of April 2026, so it has existed for about a month. There is only one director named on Companies House for that company, and that is Jamie Thompson. as it stands. Jamie is the only person listed with significant control, and there is no filings of bits and pieces bar the models of incorporation, which anybody can do uh, at the drop of a hat for the most part. But a necessity for any club in the national division to have a limited liability company set up to take things forward. Now, British hockey has always operated slightly on the fringes of what people would call normal business practices. So there is a lot kind of going on because people want the club to go forward, people want the club to exist, and ultimately, whilst their tenure in the national division has been rocky, to say the least, this is a club with pedigree. This is a club that, of course, was the dominant team in North One for a really long time. Won that 5-trophy Grand Slam, back in the day, and there is a good hockey community in Southwest Scotland. The issue, of course, is that it seems that they have flown a little bit too close to the sun with the way things were run by DJR, by John. And John, in the conversations I've had with him, has always been a polite figure, has always been very nice, has always been very respectful and very giving of his time. But clearly something has gone wrong. And obviously we saw the bits and pieces from the current ownership of the Sharks about the fact they were being charged the same rate for operating at Dumfries Rink, the Dumfries Ice Bowl, when it was closed for refurbishment. Is obviously now closed again for its summer works as well, but we will see what comes of that. My understanding is that there is no effect of the SNL team. That is a completely separate entity and organisation, and therefore they are being left to their own devices. But we do, there is a big mess. I can see a few bits and pieces in the chat here. So Dave saying DJ are going to stiff those who've paid for season tickets. Sincerely hope not. On that front, what Mike's saying here, it's always a mess as far as sport is getting refunded. Nothing on team sponsors mentioned at all. It's going to hurt the Sharks. Yeah, and it's always, these things always happen. There is always a knock-on effect of companies that won't touch ice hockey again because they've been burned along the way. Big question is, do Solway play National 1 or North 1 hockey in September? Certainly my understanding with the brief conversation I've had with folk up there is the intention is to return to the National Division. And ultimately as well, because I get the argument of going back to North 1 and stepping back down. Obviously, there is a gap with Whitley having disappeared from the division and having gone into the SNL and worked out in the SNL for the most part. Obviously, short of a bit of silverware, but a pretty good first season in the Scottish National League for the Warriors. But I think the thing people sort of say, it was the wrong thing for them to come to the National. They need to go back to North 1. Stolway were at a point where if they'd stayed where they were, they'd have stagnated, and they needed to make the step. Could they have made the step in a different way? I don't know. But the story is not done. The story is not done yet. Just start your own and call it the Dumfries Hammerhead. I want the Dumfries Border Vikings back because that is an objectively cool name. It's been great having them in the National. Good team with a nice fan base. I loved Dumfries. I liked Dumfries the town. I was having an argument with somebody on one of the British hockey discords. They said that Dumfries was not a pleasant town. It was a rubbish town with nothing to do. And I was just like, what were you doing? What did you do in Dumfries that you didn't find something to do? If nothing else, the pubs in Dumfries are amazing. Just hope BBC Sport don't write an article on the Sharks. Yeah, well, it's a game of three halves after all, Mike, as we know from such things. But yeah, so like I say, a lot going on up in Dumfries. So we hope they can kind of get bottomed out before too long. I will touch base with the folk up there and just kind of see what is going on. Obviously, as well, though, we wait to see what the state of play is with what will come out of DJR Limited on Monday. Nice walk down the river too. Yeah, amazing walk down the river. When I was in Dumfries, my bad habit, right, when I'm by myself, is I try and smash everything into a short space of time. So I did Robert Burns' house. I walked around the churchyard. I got coffee at a place that Callum Hepburn recommended to me in Dumfries. I went to sort of like the visitor centre, like the Robert Burns Visitor Centre. I got lunch at one of the pubs and had like haggis, neeps, and tatties for lunch, and followed like a walking trail and did all these bits and pieces. And I went to see Queens, and I went to see the Sharks. So I crammed a lot effectively into one full day in Dumfries, and then ended up on Sunday morning after the first game, just sat down with Callum Hepburn and a coffee before I drove home, just like laughing at the ridiculousness of how much I'd done in such a short space of time. But it is what it is on that front. Hopefully, Dumfries will be able to keep bits and pieces, keep bits and pieces as it was. Of course, we do need to mention, of course, last weekend, the WNIHL Finals weekend. Ice Cream Farm. Oh, did I miss something there? Did I say something I thought I didn't say? Ow. Apologies there. That was my elbow making a horrid noise. But yeah, certainly, of course, the big news of last weekend was the WNHL playoff finals weekend. Caledonia. Just double checking all the bits and pieces. Caledonia Steel Queens with the North 2 Valerie. I'm slightly confused by that one because that says Valerie for both of those. That's a little bit confusing. One will be Valerie, and one will be the Elizabeth. I should have got Andrew Day to do his usual bits and pieces and send me a little update with all the bits and pieces, but I haven't got them to hand. The one thing we do know, of course, though, is that the Queen Bees have Dumfries has an ice cream farm on the road in. I've only driven in the dark, so I can't really say, Mike. I must have missed it if I'm 100% honest. But the big news out of the WNHL finals weekend was the fact that the Queen Bees have done the double, having won the regular season title. They have added the playoffs into the bargain as well. I know Andrew Day and his page on Facebook, the Andrew Day 111 ice hockey page, has been updating lots of bits and pieces, but having battled their way through the semi-final, beating Wheatley Bay by 4-2, it was something of a surprise. Guildford winning in a shootout against Solihull in the other semi-final of the WNHL Elite, which set up the local rivalry for the final game of the Women's Elite League season. Queen Bees and Lightning, but a winner from Catherine Gale at 56-47 gave the Queen Bees the last word on the WNIHL Elite League season. So congratulations to all of the folk down at the hangar for their great achievement this year of doing a clean sweep of bits and pieces. Just looking at some of the other bits and pieces that we're aware of, because the two league, so in the under 16s, of course, because this has been the other big addition to the WNHL this year, was the under 16s league, where Whitley Bay won the Northern Division. The Ice Bees got the Southern. Got the South, and then Whitley Bay won the under 16s national playoff final. There's the man himself. We knew he'd pop up eventually. As there we can see, if you have a look in the chat, with Queen Bees, the 4-2 win over Whitley Bay. 2 goals from Ellie Wallace. Desiree Snook and Lily Endicott with the other goals for the Queen Bees. Casey Trail and Ruby Newlands with the goals for the Beacons. And then in the shootout, as we say, Guildford winning in the shootout over the Solihull Vixens. Jodie Edelson-Smith with 2 goals in regulation for Solihull. Mila Pironi and Isabella Zidisinska. We'll go for that. As it were. And then Andrew's also there, just put in the Elite All-Stars. Ellie Wallace from the Queen Bees was the All-Star forward. Amelia Williams of the Queen Bees was the All-Star on defence, and the netminder was Marley Easton of the Guildford Lightning. Certainly an interesting season, I think, from the Lightning, who were always kind of a sort of a fingertip further back from the Queen Bees and the Vixens, but had a much more improved season this year. I think, obviously, for those of you who've watched us on the regular, you'll know that Streatham and Bristol at the bottom end of the Elite League in the women's game were definitely a fair old step behind. Of course, we had Whitley Bay, who played so many games, they were miles ahead of everybody in terms of points, but sort of moved on from there. And then Andrew's just putting in the rest of the bits and pieces. I hope the league follow and promote Endicott going to play for Sweden next year. Would be great PR. Yeah, of course. Lily Endicott, fresh off the back of her 2 medals, having played for both the Queen Bees and the Swindon Top Cats across the weekend, meaning that she heads off to play for Troja Ljungby in the Swedish women's second tier with a fair bit of extra silverware in her pocket. As we can see there, Swindon beating Caledonia in one semi-final, and Kingston beating the Fire Bees. That's the Queen Bees' second team in the other game, in the other semi-final, which of course set up Kingston versus Swindon, which Swindon were able to come out on top. So the 2 playoffs in the top 2 divisions of the women's game, both heading back down to the south. One more southeasterly, one more southwesterly. Questions, comments, anything else anybody kind of wants to chat in? Big signings. What's your big signing of the summer so far? There's lots of bits and pieces going on. Of course, lots of change at MK with Pete Russell coming in. Of course, we've seen Dom Gabai move across to Peterborough. That was a bit of a surprise. I know for a lot of people. David Thompson, of course, has left Telford. That was a big shocker for them. And then we can see Andrew's put in the numbers from the bits and pieces there. Kingston 3-0 up after 20 minutes against Swindon, and then pulling back 6 goals in the final 40 minutes to win the Division 1 playoffs. Actually, that's a good question. My understanding is that Bristol aren't relegated, so I will wait for Andrew to give us the word on that. Though, of course, we should say congratulations, of course, to our friend Mr. Day, his first outing on commentary, alongside the brilliant Adam Mackman at women's at the weekend as well. I know Mr. Scutts was at juniors, some of the junior bits piece up at Ice Sheffield recently again as well. So friends of the show, friends of the in the BOTW world, going out and doing great things. Like I say, put your big signing for any league that you want. Stick that in the chat for the next couple of minutes. What's your big signing? What's the biggest one? In terms of actual play movement, don't worry about things like Aaron Nell, not about people retiring, but what is the actual big signing? What's the big name for you? At the moment, so there's no sort of big secret I will mention about it. I am back in Guildford for 26-27. I feel like there is more to do. I feel like I have more room to grow, and there's some things I want to try and achieve that I think I can do from that position of being of commentating in the Elite League. So I'm going to be doing that. And the prep has started. What I might do, if people are interested, is I might do if people are interested in it, I might do a video showing like the spreadsheet. I know John O'Fernley did one of his, and mine is far less sophisticated than his. But if people are interested to see the method, see more of the prep as to what happens, kind of see what I'm doing, then that's something we can look at. No one relegated from the Elite League, not certain yet what is happening with promotion. I don't think even they're probably that certain themselves, Andrew, which is probably half the joke, I think, to make on that one, isn't it? But yeah, I'm just trying to think of the big signing of the summer so far, because there's not been anything hugely earth shattering. Harvey 71 has no huge name signings in men's signings yet. Huge rumours. The ladies have made 2 good strong signings. I mean, fair play. Obviously, silly season everywhere you go. We know Liam Kirk is back in Berlin for another couple of years. That's fine. Do MKL possibly go all Brit given the rumours so far, Anthony? All Brit D, sorry, given the rumours so far. Yeah. That's a really interesting one. If, as expected, they go to 5 imports, no. If it stays as 4, I wouldn't be surprised, Jamie. If you've got potential, there's a lot of talk again of Archie Hazeldine and Josh Tetlow both signing for Milton Keynes, and I think potentially if they stick at 4, then we maybe do see an All Brit D and MK. If there's a 5 import league, I'd be very surprised, especially with Headley being back in goal as well. Tigers were always quiet on signings till late, though they have, of course, given us a bit of a retain list. We know a few people are back, of course. Some of the expected regulars. Scotty Mack is back. Deacon Fielder is back. So that's a few names, of course, as we know. Patrick Brown, of course, has gone to has gone to Hull. David Thompson has gone somewhere we don't know. So, but yeah, Tigers always are a bit more drip feedy over the summer. So we'll see. John, hope things are going well down in Kent, of course. So if you haven't, get yourself sorted out for the Harrison Lillis testimonial. Folks who are down in the southeast, if you want to go over. Harrison is a fascinating character, really interesting guy. Really, really nice bloke into the bargain as well. Should be a really great night if you're heading down to Kent for that one. Max Van Mullen to Stretton was an interesting move. Yes, it is. I think Danny Milton's retirement has opened up a hole when it came to Streatham, because I think as well the ability here that Streatham have here now is with Brett Shepherd, because I think one of the things that I think a lot of people thought Brett was capable of was the performances we saw at the Steel City Showdown. What we got at the end of the year out of Brett Shepherd is what people think and know he can do on a week in, week out basis, right? But he can't do it all by himself. And actually, one of the things from a perspective for Max is Max had probably hit a point in his development where he could have gone back to Romford and faced like 40, 50 shots a game and never kind of won anything. But he is, fully out of juniors because, of course, Max has gone back and played some junior hockey this year for Haringey to keep it, just to keep getting some extra game time. And I think as well, like for him, it's the opportunity to play in a different environment and not just keep repeating the same thing again and again. And where he's 18 now, like college, whatever's next for Max, I should really double check with him what he's doing. But the opportunity to go and play for one of the top end sides, get some big minutes in a different team, in a different environment with a different ethos, I think is going to be really, really important for him because he's played for a lot of the same teams pretty much all the way through. Streatham is a different beast. I was having a conversation with Alan Lack the other day, and I've sung Max's praises about the kind of a character and the kind of a person he is, but that has already sort of shone through. But Alan has sort of said what kind of a player he is, and the what sort of a person he is, and he says, "I'm going to look after him, Anthony. Don't you worry." So, Ben Painter obviously very, very high on him, but from a Stretton perspective, they've arguably got the best 1-2 net mining punch in the league, and we're in May. That's where we are on that front. Like, it's crazy to think about that, all things considered. Just looking as well, what else have we got? Should we get the chat back up? As for Romford, we've returned to our old coach. I expect very little to change and therefore fighting final playoff spots as usual. I think a chunk of this kind of depends a lot on it depends a lot again on the imports. It's always the big issue for Romford. They've got some of those really good Brits, Brandon Native, Jake Sylvester. These guys aren't slouches, but it's finding ways to put stuff together. Elizabeth Division 2, Elizabeth player final, Caledonia 2, Manchester Storm Women 1. So thanks for that. Sam Godfrey announcing his retirement to make it 3 to retire from the Wildcats this summer. Yeah, of course, that came out today. I was chatting with Tom Graham about this the other day, and it was one of those things of like, it'd been talked about but never really confirmed. Like, we knew Nell was retiring because he said about it, and Sam Bullas has been retiring for 5 years. But I did say to Tom the other day that, surely we'd have heard more about this by now, given what Swindon are like when it comes to retirements. But the news out today that Sam Godfrey is retiring from hockey, so all the best to him as he goes out. For me, if I'm Jacob Minter, I'm immediately on the phone to Aaron Nell tonight saying, "It's my time, coach, here I come." Very interested to see how that spot is used. Rose Mitchell King and Kel Beattie also linked to MK as well, Anthony. Yes, certainly I'd heard about the Kel Beattie discussion has been going on for a while. I don't know what Rhodes was doing. For me, I think Rhodes is worthy of an Elite League shot, but I'm one of those people, aren't I? Division 2 Valerie player final. Kingston Diamonds 2-6. Haringey Greyhounds 1. So yeah, a comfortable win there for the Diamonds. I thought RMK had signed for an Elite League team. I thought he had as well, but clearly not. I know there was some talk potentially of him going to Glasgow and joining his brother, but nothing is confirmed on Rhodes as of yet. MK are linked with everyone. They are the hockey version of Barca with rumours. Fair play, Mike. Well done. Well done on that one. I do wonder as well if MK start their link back up with Belfast again, given Kel Beattie and Carter Hamill rumours. I mean, both Hamill boys and Kel, I think, is a relatively... certainly not a terrible idea. We don't know what Max Stewart's doing either. We know Pete does like Max Stewart as well. Just have all the boys in a house. Is there a Belfast? Is there a Belfast Road in Is there a Belfast Road in MK? There is now potentially. But yeah, so yeah, that's the like I say for in terms of what's happening here, pretty much more of the same. I am going to look at some different tech for next time. I know a lot of people use StreamYard. I'm going to potentially look at doing the June one on StreamYard and seeing if we can't do something that way. But we will see how it all goes, because I venture potentially one of my issues is just that my hard drive and bits and pieces like that, I just don't have enough processing power to do everything I'm trying to do. It will be Wednesday the 24th of June is our next one. Will be the next What's Current stream. That'll be our June off-season special. What we do for that at the moment, as I say, I do not know. I need to adjust some settings clearly. Like I say, if nothing else, the new webcam was definitely worth the purchase. Belfast Road in MK, but not in Europe cities. Runs. Yes, of course, the news that Belfast will not be partaking in the Champions Hockey League this year. Although given Nitra took their place, given the draw they've been given, yep, go to the Warrior Cup and play 3rd Division Kaufbeuren, lads. It'll come out better for you. The other thing, of course, to mention, Basingstoke, of course, my club, my team, now without a coach. Jeff Flanagan having decided to return home the day after announcing a Japanese international was a thing. Certainly it certainly was a very interesting 24 hours for Basingstoke in Basingstoke in that sense, where you think of that Sota Isagai and Matt Howlett were all announced within the space of actually you think about it, that's actually a pretty crazy 48 hours. Matt Howlett announced the signing on the 12th of May. Sota Isagai, who scored the overtime championship winning goal in the Asia League for Hokkaido, signing. And then the next day, Jeff Flanagan confirms he will not be back. And it is now a couple of weeks later and we do not have a coach in Basingstoke officially. So yeah, a bit of a strange one there. Obviously remains to be seen as to what Steve Nell, as the owner, does with such things. But this is a well-run operation, and the Bison going quiet for a couple of weeks in May is not necessarily the worst idea. And just because we have no announcement, does not mean the work is not being done. And as what the Nells are like, the work will definitely be being done. So far on that front, but massively interested to see what Isagai does. Was actually speaking. This will sound ridiculous. I was speaking to Isagai's agent the other day. I'll just post his signing and bits and pieces like that. And a lot of these Japanese guys are using a very similar agent. That's why you might see a few more Japanese guys rock up in Europe this year. Time for me to head out. Sleeping on the side of a road and 4 a.m. start. Be blessed, everyone. Take care, Mike. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be out of here before too long ourselves. But yeah, lots of fun movement and bits and pieces, and of course a reminder that we are one a month doing bits and pieces, but other people are popping up with bits and pieces as well. Like I say, 3 on 3 will be back next Tuesday. Nicky pops up and does his bits and pieces ahead of the charity game. 13th of June in Slough. I will be there. I will be at the 4,000 Accounting Charity Tournament in Slough. I should be, potentially, if they sort it all out, doing a little bit of commentary for that as well. I believe they're going to be live streaming things, so Nicky's asked me to go and do those bits. So keep an eye on what Nicky's putting out for the charity stuff. It was a late one on Sunday. Last game of the day, face-off was at 8:45, but was running late, and face-off about 10:30. After the first game, face-off at 8:30. It was a great tournament. I'm really glad you enjoyed it, mate. I know, obviously, Andrew, we are, all of us here, from the What's Current stream sort of community, have always spoken very, very highly of what you've done. And given the fact that the show over the last year transitioned to talking about everything, all of your WNHL updates were a massive, massive help to us, mate. So we are massive, I'm massively indebted to you for that. But it's like I said to you, my good man, the right people are always watching, and to see you get the opportunity to do things like commentary and just do this massive amount of coverage of something that you're really, really passionate about. It may never put a penny in your pocket, but it will put a song in your heart, and that's sometimes so much more important. Kodiaks have 3 departures announced so far: Milton off to Sheffield, Anderson and Carter off to Edinburgh. Big shoes to fill. I have no doubt George Ali has someone good to bring in yet. Obviously, a really good year in South One for the Kodiaks. It's been a really, really, really interesting to see that adjustment for them. I think they're doing really, really well, and I'm really glad they, like I say, you've always popped up, made sure to sing the piece of the Kodiaks and so on and so forth. Any rumours, Anthony, about the new coaching basis? I'd be interested to see who Bison go for. I would not be surprised if they do not go back to the well and go back to U Sports for a coach. Somebody did say to me, get Ashley Tate back. That is pretty much not going to happen, as we all know. Peterborough, he's been very, very heavily involved in recruitment for Peterborough and bits and pieces this year. Bonus points if you find out where Neuer Svenstakonis is going, though, of course. Shout out to our friend Tom Norton, back for year number 14. He has a picture of him in his attic getting older and older. But yes, obviously, a lot of these big tournaments, they do seem to overrun quite drastically, Andrew. Not quite levels of, it's obviously that's quite a Steel City Showdown Mark 1, I think, are the levels worth of that one, finishing like quarter to midnight. Apologies, folks, just need a quick blow in the nose. But yeah, I think what we will do is we will say last call for bits and pieces and sort of ring it off there. The tech didn't work as we expected it to, which is a bit of a shame. What we might try is I might try fiddling with some settings. Maybe we try and do just a Facebook stream. I know Nikki uses it quite a bit. Maybe we have a look and see if we can just do something there. Maybe it's like a one-off in the gap if something comes up. I'm going to have a think. Maybe when the Bison announce their new coach, maybe that's what we'll try and do. Maybe do a live one on Facebook instead. Definitely workable. But like I say, I want to look at things like StreamYard. I want to look at making things bigger and better for next year. Because I think one of the things that worked really well was guests. I like the ability to have guests on easier, which with the setup I have using OBS is very, very hard to do. But I will work on it. But like I say, last call. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, get them in the chat. Yeah, 24th of June, last Wednesday of June will be the next off-season special. A big thanks for sticking with us whilst everything's gone to hell in a handbasket in terms of the tech at the start. Could it do it? Yes. But it was like a Micra pulling a Range Rover up a hill. I think is probably the only issue with it that we discovered on in the grand scheme of things. I hear Basic is bringing the women's team in. It is, yes. Hannah Driver very heavily involved in getting those things together. Unconfirmed what their status is for 26-27 at this time. But as soon as I hear, I will be letting all of you know as well. Because it'd be great to have the Bison ladies back. Hannah Driver started playing hockey when Basingstoke first got a rink back in the late 80s. Hugely dedicated. Bounced around a bit. Played for the Queen Bees. Played in Slough with the Sirens. Played for Solent and everything like that. But the one thing she's always wanted to do is finish off her career in Basingstoke, and she's going to get that opportunity to do that by the look of it, which is awesome to see. Hannah is a marvel of the age, and just such a smart hockey person. Are the Buffalo coming back? Not at the moment, no, is my understanding. There is no intention of putting in the focus has been to put the junior system back in place first before looking at an NIHL, a lower level NIHL team. And I've said this to Steve, and I've said it out loud before, do not call us Basingstoke Bison 2. We have the Basingstoke Buffalo. We have a history of having a second team in the town. Call it by its proper name, please, is what I will say on that front. It's brilliant news. The Women's League is growing nicely and a great watch. Yeah, it's been awesome. I would have loved to have gotten some more games this year, but my time has limits, and I obviously have made a commitment to do what I do. So I need to do that, I think, is the big thing here on that front. So yeah, we will keep going with what we do, and we will look for means and ways to try and do bits and pieces. But like I said, the 4,000 Accounting Charity Tournament, which is, like I say, I'm pretty certain it's the 13th, but I just want to double check as we're talking about it. It is, yeah, it's Saturday the 13th of June at the Hangar in Slough. So I'll be there, so do come and say hello. Should be a really, really interesting tournament. I think we will call it there and say goodbye. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Head down into the description on the YouTube video to go look at all those bits and pieces. Thank you for bearing with us for the tech experiment. Clearly some settings I need to tinker with and do some stuff with. But yeah, we won't go through all the usual bits and pieces too much. Head down into the description, like the video, share the video. A bit of a hodgepodge tonight. But of course, keep up with us. We'll be going. More hockey stories to write, more bits and pieces to do. And, like I said, but also trying to have a bit of a rest this summer. Last season was a lot of work, and I'm doing a lot of work to be ready for next season as well. As soon as I finish updating my spreadsheet, it all goes a bit sideways and more people get announced, but it is what it is. But yeah, looking forward to it. And looking forward to, just more time off. I'm off to the Isle of Wight on Saturday. The wife and I are taking the boy to the Dinosaur Museum on the Isle of Wight. That'll be a lot of fun. And that's one of the things we can just do. Just use the time to just do what you enjoy. Be happy. And if you can't be happy, then wherever you are, please do everything you can to please be safe. As my friend Scotty Walls would say, congrats to the Maryland Black Bears on the Robertson Cup in the NHL. And take care of yourself and somebody else. For Banners on the Wall at WordPress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe. And so long until next time. The great tech experiment will continue. We will see what we can do next time. But join us back here last Wednesday of June, the 24th, for the next off-season special from the BOTW What's Current stream. Have a really good rest of the month. Keep hydrated in the heat. Look after yourself, folks.